with that, I'd like to yield the floor to Lisa Porcella, and if someone could share screen with the presentation.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lisa Porcella. I'm an Environmental Services Manager for Valley Water, and I am going to share a PowerPoint presentation with you today. Let's see, hopefully my internet does not go out. It's been very bad lately, so bear with me. If it's bad, we've got a backup plan. All right. And I'm also going to stop my videos so that hopefully it won't overstress my bandwidth here. Okay, great. So we wanted to provide folks, let me make sure that this is going to advance for me. We wanted to provide folks with an update on the Fish and Habitat Collaborative effort. It has been a program that's been around a long time, and it's known as the FAHCE Program. So that's the acronym we use for the Fish and Habitat Collaborative effort. What is the FAHCE program? A lot of people have asked, what is the FAHCE program? And the answer to this is it really is a solution to the water rights challenge of northern Santa Clara County. And it really influenced 3 creeks, Coyote Creek, Stevens Creek, and Guadalupe River. And the complaint revolved around the way Valley Water managed its water supply and its reservoir releases. The claim was that our water supply releases were detrimental to 2 specific fish species, steelhead and Chinook salmon. The goal of the FAHCE program, as we mentioned, is to resolve the water rights complaint. And again, this water rights complaint does affect all of northern Santa Clara County, and it actually affects up to about 80% of our local water rights. In addition, another goal of the FAHCE program is to ensure regulatory compliance. We have state and federal resource agencies whose permits we need to comply with, including our water rights. But the overall foundation of the program is really to balance beneficial uses of both water supply and fisheries. So on the fisheries side of things, the benefits are really to improve fish passage, as well as to improve in-stream habitat enhancements for those 2 fish species that I mentioned earlier. The program is designed to be implemented in 3 separate phases. Actually, let me back up. It's actually 4 separate phases. All phases are 10 years in duration, and the first 3 phases have an estimated cost of $42 million per phase. At the completion of each 10-year phase, the overall management objectives of the program are reviewed by an adaptive management team selected by the initialing parties, and the team together determines whether or not the goals of the program have been met and the overall objectives of the program have been met. And if those objectives have been met in that 10-year phase, then there's no need to transition to the next phase of the program. If those goals are not met, there is a need to transition to the next phase of the program, and it's the adaptive management team's responsibility to determine which measures need to get implemented in which creeks to be able to try and achieve those overall management objectives. The 2003 settlement agreement is really the underpinning of the entire FAHCE program. And the overall management objective for fisheries in the FAHCE program is to restore and maintain a healthy steelhead and salmon population as appropriate to each of the 3 creeks by providing suitable spawning and rearing habitat for the fish, as well as providing adequate passage for adult and outmigration of juveniles. There were 10 initialing parties that originally initialed the 2003 settlement agreement. Currently, there are only 8 initialing parties that are still party to the agreement, and 2 of the parties that were originally initialed the agreement, one of which is the Guadalupe Coyote Resource Conservation District, and they elected to withdraw from the settlement agreement in June of 2020. The other missing party from this list that you see before you is the Urban Creeks Council. And we have heard that the Urban Creeks Council is no longer a functional organization. So they have been removed from the current list of initialing parties. We wanted to provide you with an overview of the geographical extent of the program. So the map that you see here shows you highlighted in different colors the 3 watersheds that are affected by this FAHCE agreement. The first of which is the Coyote watershed. Sorry, my mouse is not cooperating. The Coyote watershed is this mustard colored watershed over here on the far east side of Santa Clara County. The Guadalupe watershed is here in the middle in blue, and the Stevens Creek watershed is here in green. These three watersheds together comprise 500 square miles of land, over 100 miles of creek, and 7 out of Valley Water's 10 reservoirs. There are some main implementation elements to the FAHCE settlement agreement, and they really are broken into 2 separate categories. The 2 categories are the flow elements, which are shown in these light blue colors here, these 2 categories. And then there's the non-flow elements, shown in more of this tea color over here on the right-hand side. So with respect to the flow elements, there are new rule curves that have been designed that are intended to balance both water supply and fisheries. And the intent for fisheries is really to improve the winter-based flow and summer flows for the various life stages of the 2 anadromous fish. The pulse flow piece of the program here is really designed specifically for fisheries to promote both up-migration and out-migration for anadromous fish. The non-flow portion of the settlement agreement has the priority fish barrier removal portion, which includes 18 priority barriers that are identified in the settlement agreement. And 10 of those 18 barriers have already been remediated by Valley Water. The second portion of the non-flow program is the in-stream habitat complexity program. This includes in-stream habitat improvements for fish, including large woody debris, gravel, geomorphic restoration. This component also includes a variety of feasibility studies to take a look at the feasibility of doing some habitat improvements, including large geomorphic restoration. The bottom piece that you see here that's labeled adaptive management pertains to the entire program. And there's also a robust fisheries, flow, and temperature monitoring program which accompany the program to monitor the effects of the program and to monitor the progress of the program. So the next thing we wanted to do was kind of step through a history here.
Lisa, before you move on, can we go back to the previous slide?
Sure.
So
I will try to go back.
Okay.
Here we go.
So with the adaptive management program, I wonder if you could expand on it a tiny bit. One, because not everyone necessarily understands what an adaptive management program is. And secondly, I think that this is a really critical component to ensuring the ongoing success of the program. So could you just spend a little more time on that, please?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for the question. So the adaptive management program is intended to run the entire lifespan of the FAHCE program. And I think we all collectively acknowledged back in 2003 when the settlement agreement was initialed that there's a lot of unknowns associated with changing flows. There's a lot of unknowns associated with habitat improvements for fisheries. And there's a lot of just overall program overarching unknowns as to how these collective elements would work together. And so the notion of adaptive management is that each year you perform monitoring activities and you go and you monitor the progress of these measures. You monitor the fisheries, you monitor the habitat, you monitor the flow and the temperature, and you see if your program is actually having the desired effect. And if it's not, you bring those results all back to the adaptive management team on hopefully an annual basis, and you discuss the merits of the program and you start to discuss what's working and what's not. And if there's things that are not working, it's really the adaptive management team's responsibility to help figure out how to get over the hump and to make things more in line with the overall management objectives. So what I'm saying is adaptive management allows us to tweak the program and make changes to the program to meet the overall objectives.
Great, thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, so my next 3 slides here are really intended to highlight the history of the FAHCE program since its inception. I've been involved with the FAHCE program for about the last 3.5 years, and I've heard many times people say, well, I don't know what FAHCE is and I don't know what FAHCE does. So what we tried to do is put together on a timeline here all of the achievements of FAHCE as well as all of the adaptation that we've had to undergo with the overall FAHCE program. And so what we show here is the 1996 complaint that was originally filed by the Guadalupe Coyote Resource Conservation District. It was filed with the State Water Resources Control Board, as I mentioned, over our water rights and how we discharge water specifically with respect to fisheries and their concerns with impacts to fisheries. And as you can see here on the left-hand side of the timeline, this is really our major program activities that I'm highlighting. And on the right-hand side over here is the key measures that we've kind of completed as well along that same timeline. So let me talk you through this left side first. As I mentioned, 1996 complaint filed by GCRCD. And then in 2003, we also have over here at the very bottom, the settlement agreement was initialed, as I mentioned, by those 10 parties. So what I wanted to call your attention to is that on the right-hand side of the timeline, you see here from 1998 through 2003, there actually was some significant progress made by Valley Water on some key fisheries measures that were completed. So even before we initialed the settlement agreement in 2003, we actually started to enact some of our fisheries programs to enhance the fishery. So let's real quickly just step through this just to highlight some of the really key achievements. And one of the things I want to highlight here in 1998 was really a critical water management change that Valley Water made in 1998. And that was really the discontinued use of in-stream gravel dams. We used to install in-stream gravel dams for percolation needs. And in 1998, it was decided that was really not the best method to afford fish passage and that there were better ways that we could do this type of activity. So in 1998, we abandoned our in-stream gravel dam program. In that same year, we also did 2 large retrofit projects to remediate fish passage impediments. One at our Upper Penitencia Creek Mayberry facility, and one that actually was a joint project with the San Jose Water Company. San Jose Water Company had a low flow crossing on Guadalupe River, and we worked with them to remediate that low flow crossing, which was no longer needed. So we remediated that barrier as well in 1998. In 1999, we installed 2 fishways at 2 of our facilities, one in Upper Penitencia Creek, again at our Noble Fish Ladder, and the second one at Coyote Creek Percolation Pond over by Metcalf Road. We also installed a fishway. In 2000, on the Guadalupe River again, we worked with the city of San Jose to remove the Hillsdale Avenue Bridge fish barrier. It was in conjunction with the Hillsdale Avenue Bridge project that the city was undertaking. And we worked together to remediate the fish passage impediment as well as improve the bridge at the same time. In 2000, also on Guadalupe Creek, we installed the Masan diversion fish ladder. And in 2001, we installed the large fishway that's out back behind our office. It's actually our largest fishway that we have at over 200 feet long at the Alamitos drop structure. In 2002, in Stevens Creek, we remediated what was a barrier for fish passage at stream gauge 35. And then also in 2003, we removed the old Julian Street Bridge fish barrier. So by the time we hit 2003 and we initialed the settlement agreement, Valley Water had really already completed 10 very large fisheries improvement projects on all of the 3 creeks, including 6 of the 18 priority barriers that were called out in the settlement agreement. Okay, so moving on, as I mentioned, I've got 3 slides for timeline. On the left-hand side here, we've got major program activities from 2003 all the way to 2014. And in 2003, admittedly, Valley Water struggled a bit with the permitting pathway to enable us to undertake the full settlement agreement program with the flow measures. So admittedly, we embarked on an effort to conduct a habitat conservation plan. So we embarked on an effort to acquire our federal permits, and we began development of a habitat conservation plan for the 3 creeks. In 2014, after many discussions with the initialing parties and acknowledgement that the federal permitting really wasn't moving quickly enough, all initialing parties agreed that they would have liked things to move faster. Valley Water decided to change its course and begin to work on the state permitting efforts instead, specifically working towards amending our water rights on these 3 creeks to enable the discharge of flows, the flow changes, for fisheries for environmental purposes. During this time period, Valley Water continued to make advances in our streams and reservoirs to improve conditions for fisheries, and that's what you see here on the right-hand side. So while we may have struggled with implementation of the overall program and our permitting approach, we did continue to make progress on several of the measures that were in the settlement agreement. In 2004, we removed 2 barriers to fish passage, one on the Guadalupe River at St. John Street and one on Guadalupe Creek at stream gauge 43. And then in 2006, from 2009, we undertook the Guadalupe Watershed Mercury TMDL program. And this program's intent is to reduce impacts from the historic mercury mining practices upstream in New Almaden. We began implementing methods to reduce mercury levels in the creek system through calcine removal in Alamitos Creek, sediment removals on the main stem of the Guadalupe River, and in addition, Valley Water began focusing on the reduction of methylmercury in the system to reduce mercury bioaccumulation in the fish and the wildlife in the Guadalupe watershed. So in 2006 through 2009, we kicked that program off and we installed some solar bees at various locations throughout the Guadalupe watershed to improve conditions for fisheries. In 2008, we installed another fishway on Guadalupe Creek. And in 2009, we really had a great collaborative project with the city of Cupertino. We undertook a huge creek restoration project at the site known as Blackberry Farm. It was a 2,100-foot geomorphic restoration. It involved remediation of 4 low-flow fish passage barriers that were within the park. And it's a wonderful example of a multi-benefit project because we worked together with the city to restore the geomorphic function and the meanders to the creek. We installed large woody debris and gravel, and we removed fish barriers all at the same time. So it was a win-win for all of us. In 2013, we continued to make advances on our TMDL program, and we installed 3 hypolimnetic oxygenation systems in the Guadalupe watershed reservoirs, as well as one in Stevens Creek Reservoir to use as a reference site. Again, these hypolimnetic oxygenation systems, the intent of those is to reduce the amount of methylation at the mercury that's at the base of the reservoir, so that that mercury is not available for uptake by the fish and other wildlife in our watersheds. And in 2014, we had an additional fish passage remediation project at Highway 880. There were some weirs that were installed there, and they had deteriorated, and we needed to improve fish passage. My last slide associated with timeline here, thanks for bearing with me. From 2015 through current, I wanted to highlight that we really have been focused from 2015 through current on the development of our EIR. We've really been focused on the EIR that we need to be able to make those changes to the water rights and to be able to enable flows in these creeks for fisheries. So in 2015, we did file our petitions for the North County water rights changes. And then from 2016 through 2019, we really turned our attention to focusing on what do we need for the EIR. And it was agreed upon with the initialing parties that we really needed a more detailed model to be able to take a look at the flows and the impacts of those flows on the fisheries and the habitat. And so we embarked on a very aggressive program to establish a very novel modeling tool with the initialing parties and their technical work group. We had many meetings with the technical work group to sort out the details of what needed to be in the model and what the parameters for fisheries should be in the model. And we also hired some modeling experts, including the Stockholm Environmental Institute, to help us customize this brand new novel modeling tool. In 2019, I think many folks know, we have the Anderson Dam Seismic Retrofit Project. And in 2019, we recognized that there needed to be some serious coordination that occurred between those two programs. National Marine Fisheries Service informed Valley Water that the Seismic Retrofit Project needed to incorporate post-construction operational flows, which meant reservoir operations into the Anderson Dam project. And that's where it became very imperative that these two programs coordinate. And that's really what led to the decision to incorporate the FAHCE Coyote Creek Phase 1 measures into the Anderson Dam project's EIR, and to do a separate EIR for the remaining 2 FAHCE streams, Stevens Creek and Guadalupe River. In 2020, we've kicked off the adaptive management team formation, as well as the pilot implementation of rule curves in Guadalupe and Stevens Creek in collaboration with our initialing parties. And then moving over to this right side over here, just another couple things to highlight. Again, fish passage remediation is an ongoing thing, and we remediated a barrier at Evelyn Fish Ladder back in 2016. And then we have conducted quite a lot of studies in the past couple of years. We've conducted studies on Moffett Fishway, Osier Ponds, Lake Almaden, and we've produced a large comprehensive study countywide on large woody debris and gravel augmentation, which will benefit the FAHCE program as well. also want to note that in 2017, we acquired the necessary 10A1A permit and implemented our fisheries monitoring program. That fisheries monitoring program includes not only fisheries monitoring, but also flow and temperature in our FAHCE creeks. So you might be asking, all right, that's a lot of information, what's next? So what's next is we're going to continue our monitoring. We've got our fisheries monitoring and our flow monitoring. We're also going to be continuing our pilot flows in Stevens Creek and Guadalupe Creek in collaboration with our initialing parties. We also plan to continue meeting with our initialing parties and our adaptive management team to ensure that everybody's on the same page moving forward with this program. We also are going to continue our close coordination with the Anderson Project as we recognize that some of the FAHCE elements are being incorporated into their EIR. And then the next major milestone for the FAHCE program is really in June of this year, we expect a public draft of the EIR available for the public. And no fish presentation would be complete without a picture of a fish. So here we are. I wanted to share with you our lovely video that we have. This is a video from one of our FAHCE River Watcher cameras, and that was a steelhead that just leisurely swam across your screen there. And this is the types of fisheries monitoring that we are doing. We've installed these FAHCE River Watchers, which monitor with a video anytime an object passes through one of our fishways. And so this is one of the unique programs that we have for monitoring, and we just wanted to share some of the fruits of that fun project.
Well, that's a very healthy looking fish. And thank you for
continuing to swim, I see here.
Thank you for that very informative presentation.